Bazaar, and today I have a very special guest with me. His name's Carl, and you are a ghost hunter, correct?
I am a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, yes.
Okay. And have you been in the Springfield area very long, or?
All my life.
Okay.
Born and raised in Springfield, went to Springfield High, except till my senior year, and then my parents moved to Chatham, and I went to Glenwood. But yeah, I mean, lived in Springfield all my life. I've been a paranormal investigator for about 24 years, I believe now. I started in 1993.
Oh, perfect. Okay. And I suppose before we can get into the ghosts, the paranormal investigation part, we should go into what makes somebody go into that. What was that part of you that said, "This is what I should do. I really want to do this"?
Well, that stems from actually having a ghost in our house. It was one of those situations where it was brought in because one of the things I tell people, because I also teach classes on ghost hunting out through Lincoln Land. One of the things I tell people is things can be haunted, not just homes, not just places, but actual items. And this was the case with this. My dad used to like to collect antiques, and he brought home a antique trunk that he picked up at a garage sale. And it was the old treasure chest looking trunk. Well, there was a spirit attached to it. And we found out because it started wreaking havoc in the house. And we had lived in the house for a long time, so we knew it wasn't the house. My mom experienced a lot of it because she was home most of the day, and while my dad was at work. And we had all kinds of things happen. And once we got rid of it, the people that got it, it started happening to them. So it was confirmation. It stopped happening at our house and started happening at theirs. So it was confirmation that, yeah, this thing was haunted. We would, I think one of the first things that happened is we heard this incredibly loud noise. That was probably about the second night after my dad had brought this thing home. And he had placed it downstairs, which just happens to be where I was sleeping at the time. And in the middle, it was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. We heard this very, very loud noise. It sounded like somebody was moving around a piece of furniture. And I jumped up because it sounded like it was right next to my ear. So I went up. I'm like, what the heck was that? And then I thought, well, maybe someone was moving something around upstairs. So I hop up and I look around. I don't see anything. I go upstairs, and my mom yells from her bedroom. She goes, "What the heck are you doing down there?" I said, "Well, I thought it was up here." I thought it was, so she heard it too, but she thought it was downstairs. But after that, we had all kinds of things. We would lock up the house, and we'd come home and find the door open and lights on. We would have things come on by themselves. We had a hair dryer, the old handheld blow dryer for your hair.
Yeah.
We had one in our bathroom that came on all the time. And we'd go in and shut it off, and then we'd go sit down, and maybe 10 minutes later, it's on again. And we'd even go in and unplug it. And then we'd go in and sit down, maybe half an hour later, it'd come on again, so it plugs itself back in. We had a radio that would come on full blast. We had clothes dryers turn off and on by themselves. My mom would hear it, and then she'd go down and stick her hand in, and those things heat up fast, and they'd be cold. My dad had a cuckoo clock that he was working on. He never could get it because it was missing a pendulum. And that started working without a pendulum. We heard it cuckoo. We never heard it cuckoo before. My mom and me were sitting there one night watching a freaky movie on TV, like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane or something like that. And we heard this thing cuckoo, and we're like, what in the world? And we looked up, and this little cuckoo bird is poking in and out. We'd never heard it before, so I went up, and I reached up, and the place where the pendulum, because those things have to have a weighted pendulum to work. Well, my dad wasn't able to find one or make one that would work well for it. So that little piece of metal with a hole in it where the pendulum went hang was swinging back and forth. So I reached up and I stopped it. And as soon as I stopped it and sat back down, the radio in the other room came on full blast. So I went in and I shut off the radio. Of course, we're not knowing why all this stuff is happening. We're just like, it just got weirder and weirder and weirder. My mom came home and found the stove on, gas stove turned on, which could have been, if there was something there, it could have been a problem. Stuff like that, and it kept building up and building up and building up. Yeah. And finally, we started hearing loud footsteps coming up and down stairs. And it started happening when my dad was around. He didn't believe us. We were telling him all these crazy things are happening. Shades were flying up on their own. I mean, just all kinds of crazy stuff. It finally started happening when he was around. Mm-hmm. And my mom's the one who first thought of it. She goes, none of this stuff started happening until you brought that antique trunk home. She says, I'm not sleeping another night in the house with that trunk here. So my dad he didn't have anywhere to take it. So he sat it out in our front yard. And nothing happened for a couple days. But he said, well, this was summertime. And he didn't want it to get ruined because it was a nice old antique trunk. So he wound up taking it to my grandmother's house and sticking it in her garage because he didn't want it to get rained on and ruined. And her garage, thank goodness, was unattached from her house. It was a separate garage from her house. Later on, we found out that weird things were happening there. She was hearing noises in the garage. Lights were turning off and on. Different things like that. My dad was telling some guy at work, and this guy at work knew this young couple that collected antiques. And we told him there's something funny about this trunk. It could be haunted. Anyway, he told this young couple about it, and they came and picked it up. They had a couple young kids. They came in a truck. I remember when they came by and got it. We sold to them real cheap. They took it home, and things started happening to them. They said they were basically, they had packed up the kids in the car one evening and locked the doors, and they were backing out of their driveway, and the lights came on in the house. And a couple nights later, they said they heard footsteps coming up from downstairs where they had put this trunk. So if you go to garage sale and you see an old trunk, I would recommend staying away from it because it's still out there somewhere, unless somebody's disposed of it. So back in those days, I would go to the library because that was your only choice. Nowadays, you can hop on the internet and look up anything you want. Google it. Well, there wasn't a Google back then. Mm-hmm. We're talking 1970s while I was growing up. So I would go to the Lincoln Library in Springfield, and I would try to find books on anything unexplained. So, and I would read them cover to cover, and I read probably everyone in Springfield at one time. But back then, there wasn't that many. Hans Holzer was one that you saw all the time, and there was a few other authors that were, and you could find a few books every now and then, but that's what sparked my interest in this. I know that was long-winded, but
no, that's okay.
But that's really what got it started. And there's a whole show on. I don't know if you saw John Zaffis' show called The Haunted Collector.
Oh yeah.
That whole show, the basis is that things can be haunted also, and that was the case in this. Well, of course, I've always been interested in ghosts and the unexplained and Bigfoot and UFOs and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But that really, really sparked my interest because I actually experienced that myself.
Right.
And I wanted to find some answers. Okay. So that's really what got me into it.
You've been doing this for 24 years investigating.
Yeah.
So now when you look back, I mean, is this a typical type? Is it a haunting? I don't know.
I would call it a haunting, but I know that it stemmed from a particular item. Okay. That was brought in. And one of the things, and this happens more often than not, mm-hmm. I think in a lot of cases, is that if someone had been living in a house for a long time and nothing happened, and then all of a sudden something starts happening, mm-hmm. well, there's a couple things that could be happening. But more than likely it's because they brought something in. Because people go out and they buy things at garage sales, and they buy things at auctions, and they buy things. Well, we don't know the history of those things. My cousin recently, within the past couple years, had an incident with old barn siding. You know, the reclaimed barn siding that people are getting and putting in their houses and making things out of them.
Okay.
Well, we don't know what happened in that barn or what, but there was something attached to the barn siding, and her little girl was seeing some guy in the house all the time. And I when I talked to her, I said, "What have you brought in recently?" And she was going through some things. So I said, "Well, try removing things one at a time." And she did that, and she was still seeing, the little girl was seeing this guy in the house. Well, she said, "But my boyfriend recently got some old barn siding, and he hung it up on the walls." And I said, that could be it. Well, as it turns out, that's what it was. When they took the barn siding down and got rid of it, it stopped. So who knows what was going on, there. But yeah, you got to watch out for things like that.
For sure. So let's go back to 1993.
1993.
When you first started. Before we do that, I'm sorry, let's talk about a little bit about the science and the tools for an investigator. So I'm Mr. Nobody. I want to become an investigator. What are the tools I need as an investigator?
Well, I always tell people in my classes, I say, what do you think? Because most people have seen all the shows, all the ghost shows. And there's bunches of them on TV now. It's almost oversaturated.
Which ones do you think portray a ghost hunter, quote unquote, in the perfect light?
Oh my goodness. Well,
do they even?
Still the best that I can see from watching a lot of these shows. There's a couple that are pretty decent. But still the best, I think, is Ghost Hunters.
Really?
Used to be with Jay and
Grant
and all them people like that. Mm-hmm. And then because they don't sensationalize it too much. I mean, you got to realize that these shows are all on television to entertain.
True.
So a lot of them because of that, a lot of them kind of got caught faking some stuff, and they overdo things and they overreact and they do all this because they got to try to entertain people. Now, if you've ever been on a paranormal investigation, they can be pretty boring sometimes. And a lot of times we don't even know if we captured anything. We may go and we may think, oh my goodness, there was nothing much happen. I don't know if we got anything. But then we start reviewing the evidence. We start listening to our audio recorders, and we start looking at our videotapes, and we start looking through our pictures. And we may find out we captured a lot of stuff. It's just that we didn't necessarily experience it right at that time. And paranormal is one of those things, a haunted location is not necessarily haunted all the time. There are particular times when you can go into a place. I've investigated places actually that I've been to and got nothing. I mean, listened for hours and hours of recordings and looked and watched videos and all this kind of stuff. And then we go back there and the place is like off the charts stuff going on. So it changes from day to day or hour to hour and season to season. And so it's an interesting, that's what keeps it interesting though.
Yeah.
That's what makes it interesting. And just because we go to a place, someone calls us in and we don't experience anything, that we know that doesn't mean it's not haunted. Mm-hmm. It just means that the ghost didn't want to come out and play that night while we were there or whatever,
right. And so, what about on any given general, what kind of tools do you need?
That's the question you asked, the tools, mm-hmm. And I got distracted.
It's okay.
The absolute best tool that anyone can have is themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because you are the one that experiences things. Mm-hmm. You are the one that hears something. You are the one that feels something. You are the one that has your hair tugged, or it feels like someone put their hand in yours.
Yeah.
Or tugged on your shirt or something like that. You are always the best tool. I would say the next best thing, the thing that I've had the most luck with is audio recorders, digital audio recorders or regular audio recorders, because you can catch an incredible amount of EVP or electronic voice phenomena, or you hear them talked about or seen it. If you ever watched any of the ghost shows, you've seen all that stuff before. I have my best luck with that. I've listened to literally thousands of EVPs in the time that I've been investigating, and some of them are pretty darn creepy, and some of them are very loud and clear, and some aren't. But I've had very good luck with that. Photos, camera. A lot of the things that you can use to ghost hunt, you have on your phone. If you've got a modern smartphone, you've got a voice recorder on there. You've got a camera on there. You can even download certain apps. You can turn your phone into a compass. A compass can be used in replace of, say, the EMF meters. Because there's devices inside your phone that you can buy separately as ghost hunting things, but a lot of the things are right inside people's phones. So I tell people, if you've got a phone, you've got a lot of the things that you need to carry out a good ghost investigation. Simple things I have found through my years of investigating, I'm beginning to think that the simpler you go, the better luck you're going to have. People that drag in all these cameras and take an hour and a half setting them up and have all these grids of laser lights and all this kind of stuff, and these lights to beep and make noise and do all this kind of stuff, it actually scares some of the spirits away. So I found that if you go in simply, you go in and you do your EVP sessions and you ask questions, rather simple questions. And you just speak to the spirit as if they are right there in the room with you, just like there was a living person sitting right in front of you. If you talk to them that way, you're not overbearing or scaring them off. Because I have found that the more stuff you bring in, a lot of times the less evidence you capture. Because I think a lot of that stuff that flashes and makes noise and screeches and throws up power grids actually scares a lot of the spirits away. They don't know what those are. We have actually been called witches before. I've gotten EVPs because we bring these things in that they are not familiar with.
Okay.
All these electronic devices and all that stuff. And we've actually captured EVP saying, "Oh, you must be a witch," or something like that, because, you know, that kind of stuff. And if they were highly religious people or something like that, it scares them off. So
definitely an intelligent haunting.
Yes,
yeah.
That would be an intelligent haunt. You know about the different types of haunting. You know, there's residual and there's intelligent. Residual is just like a videotape. It's the same thing that happens all the time and it plays back every now and again. You can't interact with it. It doesn't interact with you. And then there's the intelligent haunt, which is our favorite, which is they actually speak to us. We can talk to them sometimes, and they give us direct answers to our questions. That's the best. That's the funnest type. But they're both very, very common.
Okay.
And you could go to a place that has way more than just that has both residual and intelligent.
So is there any interaction, I guess, between those two types of things? I mean, does an intelligent spirit acknowledge or know that there's residual haunting, so to speak?
That I can't tell you, because I don't know. I will tell you that in my years of experience that ghosts are attracted to their own kind. Where there are other spirits, usually intelligent spirits, other ghosts will go there if they're just out wandering around or they need a place because they feel comfortable because they also realize that those are the same kind of energy they are. So that's a comfort for them, even though they may not know each other or even for that matter interact with each other. I think they just feel comfortable knowing that there's that same type of energy there. And that's why they will hang out in that particular location. Now, I don't know if they also can see the residual energies that are going, like the residual energies is like just a videotape playing back. You might see a guy walking down the steps and going through a wall where there used to be a door. And you see it at the same time every day, and you don't always see it, but on occasions you do. But even if you tried interacting with it, it won't interact, just like a videotape playing back. But I don't know if they are aware of that type of energy, but it could be that there's something in the surroundings that allows the residual haunting to take place that also will feed the intelligent haunt.
Okay.
So if there's some kind of an energy, or there's something there kicking out some kind of an energy, or running water is will attract energies because running water creates electricity.
As in like in the environment, like a creek or a stream?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of homes, like my stepdaughter actually lives in a house just down here in Auburn. They have, I believe, an underwater stream running under their house. They have to keep sump pumps running all the time, or else they'll have water issues. But her house is also active paranormally. They hear kids there. And it's not an old house, but this stream, running water, any kind of stream or any kind of a river. That's why river towns are notoriously haunted. The closer they are to the river, and you can take an EMF meter, electromagnetic field meter, which a lot of ghost hunters also use.
And just while we're on that, how does that pick up?
Well, to be honest with you, it was designed for electricians. And most EMF, what they call EMF meters, work in a range of what normal wiring would be for a home. And it was help them to find out where wiring and power hotspots were inside of a house. But for some reason, ghost hunters started using them because they think that ghosts are a type of electrical energy, which they are for the most part. But we don't know what range they're operating in. It's totally a guess kind of a thing, And I've had good luck with EMF meters. The K2 meters or the ghost meters there's all different kinds. But you can also get the same you can also use a compass. Because it also it works off of Earth's magnetic fields. So I know people that actually ghost hunt with a compass. They don't even use the electronic devices. And if you go into a very haunted place, the dial of the compass will move. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept. Most ghost hunting tools were not designed originally for ghost hunting. It's just that ghost hunters have adapted them to their field, and then they'll stick a ghost name on it and then sell it for 10 times what the electricians buy them for. You can spend as much or as little ghost hunting as you want. I have a very good friend who has the largest collection of ghost hunting equipment I have ever seen. He's got a whole garage full. And he also owns a couple haunted locations. He owns Ashmore Estates down in Ashmore, Illinois. He owns the Haunted R Theater in Auburn. But he has a massive collection of equipment. And even he'll tell you that just because you have all this equipment, he just likes playing with it and he likes to take it out and try it and do different things like that. But even he'll tell you that you don't have to have that stuff when you ghost hunt. The first ghost hunters didn't have it.
Right.
And they had success in doing what some of the things that they did.
So the EMF meter you used,
yes.
You used it at your daughter's your stepdaughter's place to pick up energy from.
You can. When I went to her house, I don't even recall taking my EMF meter there too much, but I did take my voice recorders there and different things. And sometimes you can capture stuff, sometimes not. But I think a lot of the activity in her house is because of that underground stream. I can tell you that if you take one of those meters down close to a river, say the Mississippi River or the Illinois River, one that flows relatively quickly, you can measure the closer you get to the water, the EMF goes off. So it's kicking out electricity in the air just by the sheer movement of the water against the earth. And the dirtier the water, the more electricity it kicks out.
Really?
So the muddier and filthier the water is, like the Mississippi or the Illinois after a big rain or a flood, it actually kicks out more electricity than. And some people say the spirits use that electricity to manifest and to do whatever they're going to do.
So like a rainy day, you'd possibly have more activity?
You possibly.
Yeah.
Especially if you live close to water. Or running water. It's usually typically running water, not necessarily a lake or something like that.
Okay. And so we've learned a little bit about the tools you need. We've learned a little bit about maybe some of the elements that can affect and increase that. Take us back to that first investigation where you said, I'm in. I'm all in. What was that first investigation?
Well, I say that I started in 1993, but in 1993, it was more like me and a couple friends decided to go to the cemetery and check out and see if we could. And it was more about scaring each other, I think, at that time than anything. Now, the thing that happened to me with the haunting in Springfield was when I was in high school in the 70s. And of course, every book I could get my hand on, I read. So long about 1993, I'm like, I want to start looking into this more. I want to find out more about ghosts. I want to learn about this haunting that haunted our house, what it was, what it could have been, so forth and so on. So there was more materials at that time starting to come out. So more books are coming out so I can read more. So me and a couple friends just would get together and go check out places that were so-called haunted. Springfield High School, where I went to school, was haunted. And it is haunted. I mean, it's been notorious for years that people say there's a little girl there, and they found there's actually a gravestone down in one of the boiler rooms that they found. And it's built over a cemetery. Springfield High School's built over a cemetery. And they were supposed to move the bodies like out to Calvary or Oak Ridge. Well, a lot of times in that day and age, it was a lot of work to move. They had to dig up the things and then move them and then move the headstones. A lot of bodies get left. So it's quite possible that Springfield High School is built over existing cemetery.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And there was a creek by there at one time. There was a creek that ran not far from.
It's a perfect storm in paranormal.
Yeah. But of course that fascinated me. And so we'd go out to places and it's not like we'd go in, we didn't know what we were doing necessarily at that time. But we were going out to try to experience something. So we'd go out and we'd take our lawn chairs out there and just kind of sit outside. And if we don't get chased off, things like that, sneak into the cemetery and stuff. I'm not a cemetery person now. Cemeteries are a lot of places where a lot of ghost hunters like to go, but I don't, because I think of it as it's hallowed ground. It's a place that should be peaceful, and I don't go in cemeteries looking for ghosts. There's probably some there, but that's not my thing. I'm more into trying to help people understand what's going on in their places that are haunted. So I like doing private homes, businesses, things that have stuff going on, because if I can help somebody, I wish there was somebody that helped me when I was going through that, when our family was going through that. So as soon as I saw that Springfield Ghost Society was around, I'm not even sure how I heard about them or found out about them, but I immediately joined. And I had been with them. I think they only had maybe 1 or 2 meetings before I actually joined back in 2000 or whenever it was that they actually got together. So I was all about that. So my first real ghost hunt where we go, I say I've been ghost hunting since 1993. Kind of, we went to places and we investigated, but the real first ghost investigation with a group that was actually ghost hunters was with Springfield Ghost Society And they were the first ghost society, ghost hunting club in Springfield, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. And they're still around. Yeah. And I've been with them. I was with them for many years, and then I left for a little while, and then I came back. I just love the great people, and it's they get some great evidence sometimes, and it's just fun. But that was probably my first real. Now I'm trying to think back if there was a particular investigation. Gosh, I don't even remember the first investigation I did with Springfield Ghost Society, because we've had so many good ones throughout the years.
What's probably the best one that you can remember where there's no way to dispel whether or not you experienced something in investigation?
You mean there's the place that there's no denying that it was haunted?
Yep. You were there. You experienced it. Kind of something like that.
I think back on all the investigations. I mean, there's two that stand out in my mind. One of them, and the interesting thing about it is that the two places that I'm thinking of were not old places at all. They were newer homes. Mm-hmm. One of them was out by Salisbury. A good friend of mine lived in a home out there that was just off the charts haunted. I mean, it was just off the charts haunted. After living there for a while and experiencing all this stuff, her husband actually built the house, so it wasn't that old. And some of the crazy stuff that was going on there, she did a little research and found out that the whole area, it was notoriously haunted, that the neighbors also have haunted stuff going on all the time. And it was one of those cases that I believe that the whole area was haunted. So places can be haunted and locations can be haunted. In that case, I think they just happened to build their home on a haunted location.
Okay.
And that's why they were experiencing so much activity. Mm-hmm. Not because it was the house or they're buried on a cemetery. It's just that place they were at was notoriously haunted, also by a creek. And it sat up on a hill. The other house that I'm thinking of, we investigated, and actually I think one of the local radio stations, I belonged to a variety of different, probably every paranormal group in town at one time. I was a member of it at one time or another. With another good friend of mine, we did an investigation with a local radio station in Sherman, Illinois. And one of the on-air personalities lived in this house. And it had all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I actually saw only a head, go down some stairs. And as it turns out, one of the radio crew, and we had all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and it was also happening to the radio crew while they were there. One of the radio crew saw the head going down the hallway. He said he saw a floating head going down the hallway, and he split. It's like, where's so-and-so? And there's like, I don't know, we haven't seen him for a while. So they wound up calling him on his cell phone, and he goes, oh man, he says, I was going down the hallway and I saw this head coming at me. I got out of there. Those two places were, I mean, you cannot deny.
What were some of the things that were happening?
Oh my gosh. Sometimes we use dowsing rods. Mm-hmm. And at this location in Sherman, we had these dowsing rods, and this is the only time I had this happen. Now, the dowsing rods, I've tried to hold them out. You know what I'm talking about? They're like metal rods that sometimes people use them to find water and stuff like that. Well, you can also use them to ghost hunt with.
And what's the science behind that?
We don't know.
Oh,
it's still a mystery. Even scientists can't figure it out. It works off of natural earth energies or something along those lines. And it's like whatever your intent is for using them, they seem to work. Yeah. And we don't know why they work.
Makes me wonder too, because if they can find water and then water somehow, that energy can help spirits. Maybe there's a connection.
There could be. Mm-hmm. But we've also found that you can also find, just say you lose your watch out in the yard. Mm-hmm. And your intent is to use these to go find your watch, and you walk out in your yard and you're walking around and all of a sudden they cross. Mm-hmm. If you look down, your watch may be laying there.
Wow.
So you can find other things with them too. So I know people that's used them for those kind of purposes also. So we don't know the science. Actually, it's still a mystery why dowsing rods work. But anyway, I had a set of those, and we were walking through the place, and they started spinning like a helicopter. And one in my right hand was going one way, and the one in my left hand was going another direction. And they were spinning just as fast as can go, like a helicopter. I'm like, holy smokes, talk about energy. You know, a lot of times with the dowsing rods, you just wait for them to cross or uncross or something like that, and that's your signal. These things were going crazy. They were spinning. And then all of a sudden, they stopped, just dead stop from spinning like a helicopter. And I was holding on to them like, okay, what's about to happen here? And then here's radio personality all around me. So they're on the air and they're live and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, this was the strangest sensation. It felt like somebody took their fingers on the very tip of the dowsing rods and pushed down on them. And then they let go of them. So they flicked. So it was like, fleet. And did this a couple times. They flicked.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I have never had that happen before. Somebody was standing in front of them that we couldn't see, taking them and flicking them and causing them to boing, you know. And one of the guys that was with me, he goes, "Oh my goodness, I saw that." He says, "Can I do it?" So I handed them to him, and same thing happened to him. Yeah, I mean, he's like, "Oh my gosh," he goes, "This is crazy." I said, "Yeah, it is crazy. I've never seen that before. And that's the only place I've ever had that happen." And then we went inside the house, and we were still getting them spinning like helicopters. It was like someone, like a little kid or somebody was just sitting there and just whacking them and just making them spin like crazy, because it was like, this is fun. But that's also the place where I saw a guy's head walking down the steps, and they had all kinds of stuff. I mean, they had all kind of electrical things going on and things out in the yard, and I don't know what caused that place to be haunted, because it wasn't an old place. But one of the interesting things is they said that a lot of this activity didn't start until they were putting out one of these big fences, big wooden fences, and they hit something hard in the ground. They were digging post holes, and they hit something hard, and they wound up having to actually dig around it to put the post hole in a different location, so I'm wondering if there wasn't a cemetery out by there, that maybe an old cemetery, and they were hitting like a casket or something. I don't know. But they said after that, stuff started happening. All kinds of crazy stuff started happening. So they disturbed something possibly out there. They thought it was a tree root or something like that, which there was some big old trees in the yard, so we don't know. But that's what keeps this paranormal field so interesting, is there's so many possibilities and so many stories and so many things.
So, if you look at, especially in the past, decade or so, there's just so many movies coming out that involve paranormal investigators. And we can even talk about the Conjuring series and Annabelle and that whole thing. It seems like every time they turn around, there's a demon. Now, is that the case of haunting?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Also, Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures says everywhere he goes, there's demons. It's just amazing how that happens, isn't it?
Just everywhere.
I can tell you that 99.9% of the time, when you go to a haunted location that's haunted, that there's stuff going on, it's usually ghosts. It's not demons. Right. There has, in all the different times that we have gone to locations, there and the hundreds, or I don't even know if it's up in the thousands of different investigations that I've done throughout the years, and other people that I know that are investigators have done. There has only been maybe 2-3 times that we suspect something like that is going on. And normally it's because at one time somebody went looking for that kind of thing. Okay. They were messing with things they shouldn't have been messing with. They were playing with a Ouija board. They were reading books and doing some kind of rituals or some kind of a thing like that. Usually teenagers screwing around, not knowing what they were doing. They wind up summoning something up, and then they can't get rid of it. Well, the problem with that is a lot of times what would happen is that would happen, say, at somebody's home, and then they have weird stuff going on, so they wind up leaving. Well, the next family that comes in there has got this thing that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
Or that thing follows the other family around. Because sometimes I know people that are still dealing with things that they messed with as a teenager, and they're well into their like 40s and 50s now. So you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff exists. Mm-hmm. There is, those kind of things out there. It's just very rarely have we come across them. Thank goodness. Thank goodness we haven't. But I can tell you that Ghost Adventures is one of the least what would I say? Take it with a grain of salt. Okay. You got to realize that it's for entertainment purposes. Everything it automatically jumps to it being demonic and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I've been to some of those places they've been to, and that's not going on. Right. There's ghosts there, possibly. There's things going on, but they're not what he's saying they are. Yeah. And a lot of the drama is created and things like that. There's a couple of pretty decent shows on. I think Paranormal Lockdown is interesting. I've met Katrina that's on that show. Nick used to be on Ghost Hunters, Nick Groff. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that show. And he left because he got tired of what was going on, I think, yeah. and he started out on his own. That's a pretty decent show. I think they use a lot of electronics and things like that. But mm-hmm. Again, they're trying to, of course, one of the biggest myths in ghost hunting. Mm-hmm. Do you know what it is?
I don't. Mm-mm.
Ghosts only come out at night. So you have to ghost hunt in the dark. That's one of the most ridiculous things ever. Mm-hmm. You don't have to shut out the lights. Ghosts don't only come out at nighttime. If your place is haunted, it's haunted 24/7.
They're not nocturnal.
They're not nocturnal. As a matter of fact, I think you can oftentimes, if you go to a haunted location, get better evidence during the day. The best evidence I've ever caught has been during the day. Oh, wow. You got to realize that that's when most places were active, is during the day. At nighttime, people go to bed. Yeah. So I honestly think that some of these mean things that people may capture at nighttime at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning is because the ghosts are mad that you're there keeping them awake or screwing around when that you should be home asleep. Yeah. Ashmore Estates, my friend Robin Terrio's, you can get amazing evidence during the day. A lot of activity going on there. That's when that place was busy. At nighttime, they would all be in bed. Yeah. So that's a myth. And the reason that they always show out the lights and do this is because they want to show their flashy equipment that lights up and does all the cool stuff and makes it look cool. Plus, it makes it creepier. Right. So, that whole thing about when I go on an investigation, I don't care if they dim the lights a little bit, but I'm a big guy. Right. And if I fall down, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Yeah. I'm going to hurt something, or it's going to hurt me. So I don't like investigating in the dark simply because, first of all, there's no reason to. Now, some people they say it opens their senses up more because it's dark and you can hear things more, but also your imagination's running more wild with it. Yeah. So I'd rather be able to see a little bit. It's like if something moves in the room, if you hear something with the lights off, you're not going to see it. I want to be able, if there's something moving on that table over there or something gets knocked off, I want to be able to see it. Yeah. You can't do that in the dark.
That's a good point. I never even thought about that.
But that's a big myth. You don't have to investigate at night. You don't have to turn out the lights when you do a ghost investigation.
So maybe some of our listeners, they've never really experienced anything, or so they think. Mm-hmm. What are some physiological things that happen when you're in the presence of a spirit?
Cold spots, sensed presence. You feel like somebody's watching you a lot. Noises. footsteps, electronic equipment, going through a lot of light bulbs. If you live in a house and your light bulbs are popping all the time, and you've also got other weird things going on, good chance that your house is haunted. Weird smells,
Like,
things that don't belong, perfume out of nowhere, cigarette smoke or cigar smoke, things that's like, why do I smell a cigar in my house? Nobody smokes. Or I smell this really powerful, flowery perfume all of a sudden, and then it comes and goes. Pets. Watch your pets. If your pets are staring at something and their hair standing up and they're growling at something or barking at something that you don't see, or they're going and hiding because they're frightened. Children are more open to ghost activity because they don't know any better. They don't know not to be afraid of ghosts, or that ghosts shouldn't exist. So if your child has an imaginary friend, there's a good chance that friend's not imaginary. They may actually be talking to somebody, and especially if it's a continual thing, and then you notice other things start happening. Gosh, so many things take place at a haunted location. That's just some of them that I can think of right offhand. Lights turning off and on. Oh, TV stations changing on their own.
okay.
Things like that.
Oh, perfect. So, full disclosure, I have talked about it on this podcast previously. I had an experience when I was a kid with what I believe to be a shadow person. And I had an aunt who played with the Ouija board, and we all kind of went over and we thought it was fun, and then it turned into not so fun. And actually, my experience was over at Cherry Hills Apartments. I don't know if you know that area.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've looked into shadow people a little bit, but do you know much about shadow people? What are they? Are they even, because there's a show called Dead Files. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, Amy Allen.
Yeah, I enjoy that a lot. I don't know how real it is, but I enjoy it. But she talks about them as something other than what used to be human, if that makes sense. What are shadow people?
That is something, again, that could be many layers. I believe that there's a variety of different things out there that appear as shadow people. Now, by shadow people, meaning they appear as a shadow, like a shadow walks through a room. There's also something that's very, very common called the Hat Man. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Hat Man.
That's 100%. I called it the cowboy when I was a kid, but
So that's what you experienced. You saw the Hat Man. And it was a tall, dark figure. He has on, looks like a Zorro type hat.
100%.
And he's dressed in black.
Yep.
And you sometimes see his eyes, or sometimes you don't. It's just a black figure. Hat Man is very, very common. There's a book written about the Hat Man by an author named Heidi Hollis. Okay. And she thinks that this thing is evil. But I've also heard many, many stories of the Hat Man where people actually got comfort from him. There's somebody they had seen their whole life. And it's almost like he's a watcher, like he's protective. Other people just see him. He's standing in the room, or he's standing at a doorway, or he's standing by a light pole, or he's standing by a tree out in the yard. Where did you see him?
He would walk down my hallway.
Walk down the hallway.
Yep.
Standing at the top of stairs, I've heard. Did he ever do anything bad?
Well, it came from my playroom, which I've talked about on the podcast. I didn't like being in there alone because it felt like I was always being watched. So I'd go in with friends. My cousins would come over, we'd play, have fun. I'd never be the first one in or last one out. I'd always come out in the middle. And then he would come by. It was basically every night I would see this thing. And it wasn't so much he took the same route all the time. It wasn't kind of a residual thing. It felt oppressive. and I felt watched at all times. And this coincided with a lot of like kinetic stuff happening. Roaches would come out of every place. We kept a very clean house. We had one of those old TV sets, and it was put into wood, so it looked very ornate. And we put VHS tapes on top, and they would literally fly across the room. Yeah. And so eventually he stopped at my doorway after a while. And it was then a while through that I started turning my back to the door. And a few weeks after that, I woke up and I was being dragged down the hallway, not by him, by my mother. And it was because I couldn't figure it out until I realized I wasn't breathing. And I had like asphyxiated in the middle of the night. And so she brought me over to the toilet and was like pounding on my chest, on my back, trying to get me to breathe. Eventually I did, but I passed out. And when I woke up, she finally took me to the ER, and then I went to the doctor, and I had some health problems, but we moved out. My health problems got better. But it felt like a bubble. Whenever we get home, I'd hate to go home. Because when I get there, it was like as soon as we walked through the door, my mother and I would be yelling at each other. It was this very oppressive place. Yeah.
And eventually, did you move away from that?
We did,
and you didn't see him after that.
Haven't seen
so
him
he
since.
Was. It sounds like he may have been tied to that location. He was that he had something. There's a reason he was at that particular location.
Yeah,
because of whatever happened there. Or, it's still a mystery. This is one of those things that you can see on television a lot. Yeah. Now, there's different types. I firmly believe that there's different types of so-called shadow people. Some people see the Hat Man, which is a lot of time very, very descriptive of which you saw. They also see people in a shroud or like with a shawl over their head. Some people see them in a robe. Like a monk or something like that. Some people just see shadowy darting figures to and from different places. I honestly think that there's so many layers to this, what people are calling shadow people. I think in a lot of cases they're just ghosts.
Yeah.
Now, a ghost, some people have the concept of if a ghost is dark colored, that it's bad because it's dark colored. It's black or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes ghosts will appear as in white or whitish form, or they'll appear as a shadowy form, or they'll appear as a blue color, or they'll appear as you and I, solid, or they'll appear as something else.
My last guess, that's funny you say a blue color. My last guess saw, and I'd never heard this before until then, they went to Voorhees Castle.
Yes.
And they had seen a blue figure. I'd never heard of that.
And there's actually, it's so common in the paranormal field, there's actually a color that they call paranormal blue. It's because a lot of paranormal things or sightings appear to be bluish. Sometimes they're dark blue, sometimes they're light blue, sometimes they're a bluish type form. And whenever someone is telling me a ghost story, and if they are going along and all of a sudden they say, in this blue type figure, I almost instantly think they had a legitimate paranormal sighting. I never tell people that. But as soon as they tell me that something was blue, I'm thinking, they had a real paranormal experience. That it was. I'm not dismissing the other ones, but because that has been reported in a lot of what I believe to be true paranormal cases, is this blue color. And it's interesting that you talked to somebody that has experienced that. That's awesome. That's awesome, really.
Yeah.
Was it a human type figure?
Oh, yeah. And they were, I guess there's a roundabout around there somewhere near the castle. And they drove by. He saw it. And then he's like, did you guys see that? They go back around, it's still there. And everyone in the car experienced it. And so they took off.
Yeah, that's neat.
So I guess there's, sorry, I don't mean to take up all your time. I apologize.
Oh, no, I sit here all day talking about this.
So back to Amy Allen.
Yes.
I found her, especially from a medium perspective, I found her ideas about ghosts to be counteractive to what most people thought. I found it countered a lot of what most people talk about ghosts, because she talked about it as a way that they can manifest their own energy if they're a certain type of intelligent spirit. So they can actually make themselves other things, especially if they're angry. There was one episode where it was called The Collector, and it was essentially it was a spirit that it turned into something else that essentially fed off of other spirits. There was another one where she talked about it looked like a jellyfish, 2 jellyfish type things, and they had gone from being a human to essentially emotion. I mean, are those things, is that just for TV? Is that just to have some sort of...
Well, I don't know, because Amy Allen, I think she's a legitimate psychic. I think that I think that a lot of the things, and I believe that a lot of the things she sees, she's really seeing these things. Or what she's experiencing, she's really experiencing these things. Now, there's different levels, and I explain this when I do my classes too. There are so many different types of haunts. Way more than a dozen. There's way more different types of hauntings. And she's explaining one. It's not those kind of shape changers. They definitely exist.
Okay.
But they're not necessarily your normal ghosts. Now, your normal type intelligent ghosts that we call were human at one time, and they're always going to be human, even in spirit form. Now, there are these things, because for lack of a better term, to call these shape-shifting type things. What are they? I don't know, but I know that they're probably not all human. They can appear as human, but they can also appear as a dog, or they can also appear as an owl, or they can also appear as a monster, or a... I do think these things are out there. Are they as common as your regular ghosts? No. Do they exist? Yeah, I do believe they do. Maybe they're alien type. Maybe they're some kind of an alien form. I don't know. Right. Thank goodness I haven't come into a lot of contact with a lot of that type of energy. Yeah. She does, because she goes all over the place. Yeah. I'm mostly in this area, and there's a lot of stuff going on in this area. I don't have to go somewhere else looking for ghosts, because I know they exist. But I'm happy to help out anybody that would ever need my help. I'm actually, delighted to do that. I don't know what she's seeing. She experiences a lot of those negative type energies too, and those are out there. I think that if you're in a home with a lot of negativity, or something bad happened there, or sometimes you're more apt to get those type of energies in that area if there's a lot of negativity that happened there, or a lot of bad things happen in that particular location, that might attract that type of a negative energy.
So it's kind of like the grudge type of mentality of something bad happened, and so it just attracts negativity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just have a few follow-up questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I always ask my guests this, because I think after what happened to me when I was younger, I had a couple other experiences. I consider myself Christian. I do. So do I. But it really gives me implications about what it all, what is this? What does that mean? So to you, what is this? What does it mean in the context of your personal beliefs?
I think, now this is my personal belief.
Right.
I think that just because whatever faith you are, ghosts to me are a natural thing. If you look at it more as they were here before before we came, and they're going to be here after we leave. If you look at it more as an energy type thing, and you look at it more as a natural type thing, the ghosts exist. Well, they've been here. They're here. They're still here. It's just that not everybody experiences them all the time. And it's not usually, some people just will say, I don't believe in ghosts until they have something happen to them. And then they totally change, they do a 180. But I think of it more as that's just one of the aspects of the world that's there. And not everybody comes into contact with it. And then when they do, a lot of times nowadays, they know they got someplace they can go to seek help. Yeah. My belief as far as religion goes is that I believe that God gave us free will from the moment we're born. And when we die, he doesn't rip that free will away from us. Okay. That if we decide to stay on this plane for whatever reason, we can do so. Okay. There's better places. My faith leads me to believe there's better places we can go. Right. There's a better place over on the other side. And if you choose to go there, you can. And I always think that door is open for you to go. But if you want to stay here for whatever reason, whether you have unfinished business or whether you want to make sure a loved one's taken care of or for whatever reason you have, you can do so. So that's what I think a lot of these ghosts or spirits are. I also believe that you can cross over to the other side, be it whatever it is, the better place or heaven or whatever, however you want to, call it, or whatever your beliefs are. I believe you can also come back and visit whenever you can. I believe that when you smell grandma's perfume, or you smell, say you had a grandfather that liked to suck on peppermints, and every now and then you smell peppermints and you're like, oh, grandpa's here. Around the holidays or around birthdays or around important dates, your loved ones are around you. And sometimes you can sense that, or you can feel them around you and you just know they're there. And they just stay for a short time and then they're gone. Right. I do believe that is something that's possible.
It's just comfort.
It's a comfort. You can gain comfort from it. Because you know that they're in a better place, but hey, they're dropping in to say hi. Right. And then it's like, okay, well, Grandpa's dropped in today, and so forth. You can't go telling everybody about that because they may think you're crazy, but a lot of people experience that. They just don't talk about it on a regular basis.
True. So a word, a phrase, a term, kind of gets thrown around a lot, but I personally don't know what it means, I guess. I know some of my listeners probably don't either. What are interdimensional beings? It's a very big term, it sounds like, but what are they? Or what does the term mean, I guess?
Interdimension, well, I just watched a show on this on television yesterday, as a matter of fact. They were talking about the different dimensions. And scientists, many very, very well-known scientists, and mathematicians and people that are into physics and they believe that there's different dimensions, that anything that you can possibly imagine is happening in a world in a different dimension. It's just that whatever choices you make leads you into whatever outcome, whatever that particular dimension timeline you decide to experience in this timeline.
Yeah.
So I think that scientists pretty much come to determine that this is very real, that there are multiple dimensions living side by side. And, at any given time, you might veer off into one or the other. And say there's a timeline where you left here and you went to McDonald's and got a hamburger. Well, there's another timeline where you didn't go get the hamburger and you drove down the road and something else happened. Or there's a time where you go stop and got a taco. Or so there's all these different kind of possibilities.
Yeah.
And depending on your actions as to what timeline you wind up going into. It's a weird kind of a concept.
Yeah.
And it's almost unfathomable. But to hear these scientists and people that study physics and stuff, they say it's very real, that these things, they honestly believe these things. So an interdimensional creature or an interdimensional thing is a creature that has somehow discovered the ability on its own to traverse these different timelines.
Oh.
So there is somewhere in that same timeline where you stop and got a hamburger, there's also one where you go and you're driving down the road and you encounter a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Or you see a UFO, or you do this, or you do that, or you do that, or you get a hamburger and so somehow those creatures have found out how to traverse in between the different dimensions that we don't necessarily know how to do it yet. Yeah. Although we quite possibly do it every day. Only it just happens by our choices. These, they have like intentionally know how to maneuver to. Now, a lot of people think that Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, are interdimensional creatures because there's times when you could see their footprints and all of a sudden there's nothing. It's like they disappeared, or they go behind a tree and they're gone.
Right.
So they think that they have slipped into a different dimension.
But it's like a conscious thing.
Yeah.
It's meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite possibly.
And actually, that kind of leads me to my last one, and it's more so a follow-up from my listeners will remember a while back. I played a piece of Bigfoot evidence. It was a 911 call. I don't know if you've ever heard that one. It's the one from, I believe, Washington State. It's a man calling in. And he's saying, you need to get somebody out here. There's a Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
I think I've heard it. I think I've heard it before.
And,
it was in his yard or something.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, he sees somebody. He's about, 8 feet tall, something like that. Do you know much about that case at all?
No.
No?
I do believe that there are these creatures out there,
mm-hmm.
but there's not only those creatures. There's a lot of other different kinds of creatures too.
Really?
You wouldn't even imagine what kind of creatures are out there. But I think that these what's called Bigfoot or Sasquatch or so forth. I've got a good friend, Stan Courtney, who is a Bigfoot researcher, and he's come to my classes and my paranormal discussion group. I have a bi-monthly, every other month, I have a paranormal discussion group that meets at Lincoln Land.
Oh,
I've got one coming up November 18th.
Yeah.
Out at Lincoln Land. It's the last one for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully next year I'll be able to do it again, or maybe do it on a monthly basis like it used to be. And anybody's welcome to it. It's open to the public. Stan has come, Stan has come on several occasions and talked about Bigfoot because he does Bigfoot research. He's traveled all across the nation, studying Bigfoot. And he believes that these creatures, he says, they're not as rare as people think they are. They're all over the United States. Illinois is 4th in Bigfoot sightings in the nation.
Really?
Yes.
I had no idea.
4th. About to take over 3rd.
I'm guessing it's downstate Illinois?
No.
Really?
No. All over.
Even Springfield?
Even Springfield. Oh, yeah, just right up the road.
No way. Really?
Here in Chatham. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And out between Chatham and Auburn, there's a place along Sugar Creek. There's supposed to be a Bigfoot sighting. There's Bigfoot. They found prints. They found all kinds of evidence and different things.
Was this in recent years? Or?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Down here off of Spalding Orchard Road, there's been sightings before.
Wow.
By Little Lick Creek area there, right off of Route 4. Out by Sangamon State University, there's been sightings. These things, like Stan says, he says they're not as rare as people think they are. They're just really good at hiding. And they're sneaky. They're just very good at what they do. And you know, I know that, just outside of Chatham, in a particular area, some friends of mine a couple years back were ghost hunting, at a cemetery. And they all of a sudden heard these loud sounds like thudding, like somebody running. Well, of course, they're like, holy smokes, what's going on here? So they're sitting on the ground inside of that old cemetery at night. They weren't supposed to be there at night, but that's where they were. And they started getting pelted with rocks. And then they smelled this horrible stench. Horrible stench smell. They're like, what is that smell? It's horrible. And then they started hearing noises, and then they started getting pelted with rocks. And then not too long after that, some friends of mine went out there and they found some Bigfoot, some Sasquatch type footprints. So it's quite possible that they're very, very close. And Stan thinks that they may even hop on trains, and you know how a lot of train tracks has woods next to them.
Yeah.
So it's possible that they get on trains and then they hop off. He says he's actually seen them in between cars. Wow. In between the cars, they get in there and they hunch down. And it's not passenger trains. I'm talking about freight trains that sometimes stop. A lot of times you now will see freight trains stopped. Well, it's easy for them to get on, or they're traveling at a not very fast pace. So they can get on and off. And he says they actually are getting around that way. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But, you know, the Native Americans have been reporting similar type creatures for years and years and years. Yeah. They call them wild men, or they call them the old men of the woods, or something like that. So
that's fascinating, and that combined.
I could sit and talk for hours on UFOs and Bigfoot and ghosts and all these crazy things like that.
I love it, and I think one of my favorite. I mean, haunted. My brother and I went on a road trip. It was Haunted, Illinois.
Yeah,
we used that as our kind of guide. So we went to Devil's Bake Oven and all those.
Oh, did you have the book Haunted, Illinois? By Michael. Oh gosh, he's a good friend of mine.
Or no, it was Weird Illinois. I'm sorry,
Weird Illinois. Oh, that's a Troy Taylor book.
Yeah.
Okay.
I used that, and
Michael Keene is who I was trying to think of. Michael Keene wrote a wonderful couple great books on Paranormal Illinois and Haunted Illinois, and he's got a list of different places you can visit, and it's got little ghost factor. That's like the haunted factor, and there's like 3 little ghosts for if it's, it goes like a scale of maybe 4 or 5 ghosts, and then he has them listed as to how haunted they actually are. Because he's traveled around and went to a lot of these places.
Well, I noticed in the 70s, just talking about kind of moving away from more ghosts, going into the paranormal period, though, it seems like in the 70s there were a lot of sightings. I mean, you have in the 50s, 60s there, like on the East Coast, you have the Mothman, and then you have there are a ton of Bigfoot and UFO sightings, and probably my favorite Illinois one is the Enfield Horror, the Enfield Monster, if you remember that one. I mean, so I guess I see the hominid side, like maybe this is Bigfoot is an undiscovered hominid, but then now after talking to you, maybe it's an interdimensional being, like you said, where maybe in another world.
I don't know. That's just it. It's interesting as heck, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, if it is just I believe that it's got human DNA.
Yeah.
I do believe that there is a part of it that's human.
Human or descendant of human? Like a
that's just, I don't know. Yeah. Or is human descendant of it? I believe that Stan Courtney actually got DNA very close to here, down by the lake, from some people had some activity happening at their house, and he thinks that a squirrel may have ran up inside of a gutter And this Bigfoot type creature, whatever,
Yeah.
actually ripped the gutter off the house, dented it up. It actually had tooth marks in it, like where it tried to bite into it to get to this thing.
Yeah.
And there was blood inside of it. And he sent it off to
Yeah.
be tested. And it was one of the best, purest blood samples because it was inside of this aluminum gutter
Yeah.
that they've tested. And it did have some human DNA, but there's other things there too.
Wow.
And they don't totally know what it is, an undiscovered type of a thing.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And it was right very, very close to here.
That's fantastic.
So they're around us. There not only are ghosts around us all over, but there's, these possible other things going on. And Illinois, in particular, even this area, Chatham, Auburn, Glenarm, a lot of UFO activity.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. See, you only hear, the Phoenix
You don't hear about it. That's the thing.
things like that.
Most people that's seeing these things, they may tell you, or they'll come to my discussion group, and they'll say, "Oh my God, we saw a UFO the other night out Loami. There's a lot seen out by the Loami area."
How recent?
Oh, very recent.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They saw this and they sat and watched it, and they don't report them.
Yeah.
You don't hear about them on the news necessarily unless somebody got some really good video footage or something like that.
Right.
They may talk amongst friends or they may not, or they'll come to my discussion group and say, "Hey, this is what we saw, and did anybody else see this?" So there's a lot more of it going on that than gets actually reported or what you ever hear about.
Yeah.
Take that times multiple numbers, what you actually hear about or what actually gets reported.
That's awesome. It's just nice to know that. I mean, not nice to know, but I love the paranormal, and it's nice to know that it isn't just happening in Phoenix, and it wasn't in New Mexico.
No. There's a lot right here in our neck of the woods.
Wow.
Yeah. If anybody's interested in the paranormal or to be a ghost hunter or and with the Springfield Ghost Society, we don't just investigate ghosts. We also will do cryptids. We also will do UFOs. We will also do Bigfoot sightings or anything like that. So if anybody has anything like that going on, they could also get a hold of us and contact and say, "Hey, we got this going on," and we'd be happy to come out and check it out. There's so many things out there that people can experience and I've heard a lot of different things with my discussion group that I have and the classes that I teach. People come in with these stories and they're like, you're going to think I'm crazy. Let me tell you this story. And I always tell people, if there's any group in the area or in this area that will think you're not crazy, it's this one. Because we have heard some of the wildest stories of every kind of phenomena. Don't be scared or ashamed if you've got weird stuff going on, let us know. And if there's any way that we can help, we certainly will try to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carl. I actually just want to make sure that my listeners know November 18th is the discussion.
November 18th, it's in the Millennium Center out at Lincoln Land Community College here in Springfield. And it's in room 1104, which is right inside the door. If you will go into the front of the Millennium Center. And the Millennium Center, if you're familiar with Lincoln Land Community College, it's got a big circular Stargate-looking sculpture outside of it. Mm-hmm. It's the building that's right next to that. You can, right off the parking lot, you go in, and the first room that you come to is where it's at. It's got a bunch of glass on it. That's where we hold our discussion group. It goes from 1 to 4. And we oftentimes share snacks, and we sit around and we talk about any and all things paranormal. As a matter of fact, I think that Debbie Lowry, I'm hoping that she will be one of our speakers, the head of the Springfield Ghost Society, to show some evidence, different things we've caught throughout the years. We may have, I'm in talks with Sam Maranto, who is one of the head guys in MUFON, which is a mutual UFO network, which is a national and international organization on the study of UFOs. And he lives up in the Chicago area, and there's a possibility he'll come down and talk about some UFOs and things like that. We just have a good time, and we sit around and talk about paranormal, and we eat snacks, and we just have a great time. And it's open to the public. Anybody's welcome to come. So
Perfect.
my name is Carl Jones. You can also look me up on YouTube. I've got actually maybe an interview or two out there that I did on different radio shows. There's one on there that's like 2 hours long, and all we do is talk about paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely look me up, or look up Springfield Ghost Society. You can find us on Facebook or on the internet, and Google it. And I am a part of that.
Thank you for listening to the Paranormal Bazaar. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at para_bazaar, and like us on Facebook. Paranormal Bazaar is mixed and recorded in partnership with 3 Down Productions.